Glasses, and today we are going to talk about the depth of the market as it relates to the antiques and collectibles trade. Now, I know that a lot of you, if you studied business, if you studied finance like I have, you already know the definition of the depth of the market as it relates to financial securities, mainly individual stocks. And for those unaware, the depth of the market is a simple measure of supply and demand for liquid and or tradable assets. It is usually based on the number of examples readily available on the open marketplace for purchase at present time. In certain instances, the depth of the market can be used to help assess the likely direction of an asset's price. And that is why we are going to be going into this today as it relates to the antiques and collectibles trade. Now, for those of you out there that are watching this particular video for the first time, if you don't know who I am Sean. I am part of Reserved Investments. That is my company name. I am a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade. I write for Antiques and Auction News, and I have been active in the overall antiques and collectibles trade in some form or another since the age of 12. I am now in my mid-40s, and I am sharing all of these core concepts that I've learned over the years free of charge on this particular YouTube channel. That said, shameless plug, if you do find a use of my services or resources, please email me. My email address is in the description below. With that being said, I'm going to ask two questions here that this video is going to answer for a lot of you guys. Number one, do you ever wonder why extremely rare and scarce items in the overall antiques and collectibles trade are so hard to value? Number two, do you ever wonder, those of you that watch this channel on a regular basis, why I advise you to completely avoid investing over the long term, keywords there, over the long term, in certain common collectibles that are selling for insane values at present time on the open market? Well, the reason and the answer to both those questions all comes down to the concept of the depth of the market, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, what you need to know is the depth of the market can be used to gauge the current interest in a collectible asset. Also note, the most popular collectibles actively traded on the open market tend to have a greater depth of market and are usually more common than that of less popular or scarcer collectibles. This is why those of you that have been watching this channel since its origins, if you guys recall, many years ago, it's been many years now since I covered this particular talking point, but if you remember when Heritage Auctions unveiled the Sony PlayStation prototype video game system, the one-of-a-kind system that went up for bid, a lot of people were screaming at me in the comment section for some of those particular videos that I did, that particular item was going to sell for over $1 million. And I couldn't stop laughing because, spoiler alert, that particular item, when all was said and done, only sold for around, I think it was $400,000 with everything. And actually, I think it was a little bit less than that. But what I will tell you is the reason why I knew that is because I understand the depth of the market. I understand that scarce, rare, one-of-a-kind items, pardon my French, are a bitch to appraise and evaluate, especially when there's no proven track record for the sale of those particular items on the open market. The Sony PlayStation Nintendo prototype system, whatever it's called, Nintendo PlayStation prototype system, I have no idea what we're even calling it anymore, was a one-of-a-kind item that never sold at public auction before. There were no records for us to go back and view and see, oh, this particular item at this point in time would realize X number of dollars on the open market. There was nothing for us to analyze or compare it to. There was nothing else like it ever sold. So when I first got wind that particular piece was going up for bid, I knew right away that this item most likely is not going to get past $1 million for that reason alone. Because being an expert in the trade, being somebody that knows how to appraise items, when somebody brings me something that is one of a kind, when somebody brings me something that is truly, truly scarce and rare with no track history, honestly, the hair on the back of my neck stands up because I do not like appraising those items, and neither does an auction house, neither does any individual that operates in the antiques and collectibles trade. Just ask any of the high art dealers out there that deal in one-of-a-kind pieces that sell for millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. They are next to impossible to appraise. If you want proof, Andy Warhol, one of his most famous works of Marilyn Monroe, just went up for bid. And there were experts, there were dealers, there were auction houses saying, oh my gosh, this piece is going to go $250, $300 million. Well, the final bid was record-breaking, but it was nowhere near that amount. It sold for $195 million. Now, why were those individuals wrong? They weren't really wrong. It's that you need to understand that it is extremely hard to appraise and evaluate one-of-a-kind scarce items, even if there's a lot of market hype behind them. That's why I tell you guys right now, in the current crazy prices we're seeing in vintage comic books, which is going to be the core crux of this video, we're going to get to that, you need to understand that if an Action Comics 1 in CGC 9.0 condition right now came up for bid, that particular bad boy would probably sell for well over $5 million. Now, I don't know where the final bid would end up, but it would be very hard for me to make a value judgment on that simply because it's too scarce and rare to evaluate. All I could do is go back into the market and look at previous examples of that particular item that sold when it came up for bid and analyze where I think it's going to go based in the current economic environment, based also where demand is for vintage comic books. And spoiler alert, obviously you guys know that if you're watching this particular video, demand for key vintage high-grade comic books is very high right now. It's at an all-time high. Make no mistake. Now, another thing before we get to today's fundamentals and examples, you need to understand that when analyzing the depth of the market for any collectible asset, you must take into account the market cap of the collectible asset in question. Now, this is what I mean by that, and this is going to upset some of you, but I'm sorry, I'm a consultant in the trade. I deal in facts. I don't really care about your damn feelings. For instance, the market for vintage key issue comic books right now has a greater market cap than that of vintage Magic the Gathering cards. I think we can all agree on that. If you don't believe me, here's a little bit of a hint. If you go back and you look at recent auction histories for vintage Magic the Gathering cards and collectibles, you're going to see the most valuable card right now in Magic the Gathering's history is an Alpha Edition Black Lotus. Grade it in high grade, that particular item will bring close to $500,000, if not more, on the open market. Well, obviously, if we compare that to comic books, there's several vintage comic books right now that I can name that have sold for millions, if not more than millions, which pretty much eclipses the value of the overall vintage Magic the Gathering collectibles scene. However, let's flip this on its other side. If we compare the market for key vintage comic books to that of classic U.S. coins, I hate to say it, guys, U.S. coins eclipses the market cap for vintage comic books. And if you don't believe me, study that market. You're going to see it's not uncommon to see U.S. classic coins sell for upwards of $10 to close to $20 million at present time. Vintage comic books are nowhere near that market cap and that size. You can also study the sales paradigm and the sales results of certain key auctions that cater to both comic books and coins. For instance, I brought up Heritage Auctions already. Might as well stick with them as an example. If you look at their signature sales, you're going to see that in most cases, collectible coin auctions, the signature sales, surpass the amounts that are offered in vintage comic sales, all things being equal. Now, sometimes you will see that certain comic sales have surpassed that of coins. You have to take into account the quantity, what's being sold, and what key items are also being sold in each of those auctions and compare it realistically to one another to get the answer. But you will see that the market cap for U.S. coins is greater than that of key vintage comic books at the filming of this video, May 2022. Now, the depth of the market paradigm proves that the more rare or scarce an item is, the harder it can be to assess value. With that being said, we need to talk about CGC graded comic books. And I'm going to actually use 5 key examples here. And this is going to answer the question that I asked at the beginning of this particular video, which is, do you ever wonder why I advise you to completely avoid investing over the long term and certain common collectibles selling for insane values at present time. Now, the first comic book we're going to talk about in this video is Amazing Spider-Man 300, which, as you're going to see through the analysis of this, should be anything but amazing. In all honesty, they ought to strip the words amazing from this particular comic book. And I've said this many times in this channel. A lot of you guys don't want to listen to me. You go on eBay right now, you're going to see multiple copies of Amazing Spider-Man 300 in CGC 9.8 condition being offered for sale. If you log on to any dealer site, any of your favorite dealer sites, Greg Reese, Bob Storms, High Grade Comics, Metropolis, you're most likely going to come across this book more than any other from the Copper Age era of comics being sold in CGC 9.8 condition at any regular time. Now, to be fair, there is one caveat here. I totaled out all of the totals of each of these comic books in the grades I'm going to be discussing. I did use the total amount. So when I say that there are 1,558 copies of Amazing Spider-Man 300 in CGC 9.8, this also includes restored copies. So basically what I did was I just took that total number. I'm not going to get into the specifics of how many are in universal grade, how many are in qualified grade, how many are in restored. We're just going to use the total amount. So this particular video was filmed and is being filmed in May 2022. That's important that I tell you that, just in case you watch this a year from now and you go, hey, Sean, these numbers are wrong. Well, it's because if you look at when I'm filming the video, you can see this is what the numbers were at according to the CGC census at that particular time. Because I do know with a book as common as this, I am sure there's somebody out there watching this video right now that probably has 5, 10 copies of this book bag and board it in near mint, maybe not 9.8, but maybe 9.2, 9.0, 9.4 condition. They send them into CGC. Obviously, these counts are going to be wrong. These counts are probably going to keep going up because there is a lot of this out there. So why am I talking about Amazing Spider-Man 300? Well, in 9.8 condition, again, there's 1,558 copies. In 9.6 condition, ready? There are 4,580 copies. In 9.4 condition, there are 5,251 copies of this book, and I'm not going to even bore you with 9.2 and 9.0 numbers. With the amount of books available on the open market, can you not agree that this book is anything but rare? This book should not be called amazing. The depth of the market is too big for this particular book. It is too easy to find. This is why I would never invest in this book. Would I speculate in it? Yeah. If I knew I could make money, like I came across a copy of this that was really selling at a fairly low value, and I knew I could flip it directly onto the open market, I would take the short-term profit. But there's no way I would lock up any reasonable amount of money in this book long-term, just due to the fact that just in 9.8 condition alone, there are 1,558 copies of this thing floating around. Now, let's compare the depth of the market of Amazing Spider-Man 300 to that of Werewolf by Night 32. Now, to be fair, I have been very harsh and critical on Werewolf by Night 32. I still think the book is selling for an extreme premium due to the wonderful Disney Plus show, maybe you like, maybe you hate, that is currently streaming. However, when we compare Werewolf by Night 32, Bronze Age book, there are only 19 copies in 9.8 condition. In 9.6 condition, there's only 85 copies. In 9.4 condition, there are 227 copies. In 9.2 condition, there are 286 copies of this book out there already graded. So when we compare the depth of the market of Werewolf by Night 32 to that of Amazing Spider-Man 300, you're going to see that Werewolf by Night 32 is by no means rare. Werewolf by Night 32 is by no means scarce, but at least the depth of the market looks a little bit better than that of buying a book like this at present time. Now, we're also going to talk about everyone's favorite, Incredible Hulk 181, first appearance of Wolverine. Full disclosure, I have a copy of this book in 9.4 condition, universal grade. According to CGC, believe it or not, there is one 9.9 copy of this book floating out there. There are 144 copies in 9.8 condition. There are 376 copies in 9.6 condition. there are 9.4, there are 606 copies, and in 9.2, there are 799 copies of this book. Now, if you compare Incredible Hulk 181 to that of Werewolf by Night 32, you're going to see, obviously, there's a lot more copies of Wolverine's first appearance that we know of out there in the open market that are graded by CGC than that of Moon Knight's first appearance. Now, this is a very interesting dynamic. Question that I routinely get asked is, well then, Sean, if this book isn't rare, why is it selling for so much? Well, obviously, the popularity of Wolverine is much more greater than that of Moon Knight. The popularity of Wolverine is much more greater than that of Venom. So you have to take that into account as well. Obviously, no one is going to make an argument that Incredible Hulk 181 is rare or scarce. Even when you get to the high grades, I'm sorry guys, there's 144 copies in 9.8 condition and the book was printed in 1974. Saying that your 9.8 copy of Incredible Hulk 181 is rare is completely ridiculous. Now, you can make a valid argument that the 9.9 copy has what we call as grade rarity. Meaning because of that grade, it is extremely scarce, it is rare, and it is valuable on the secondary market. So you understand, just by looking at those three books, what we are looking at here when we talk about depth of the market. Guarantee you right now, with the popularity of Moon Knight, you can go on almost any dealer site, you can go on eBay, and you're bound to find a copy of Werewolf by Night 32 in 9.2 condition or higher. Same thing's true with Incredible Hulk 181. You got the money, you want to spend 20 grand on Incredible Hulk 181 in 9.4 condition, hey, knock yourself out. There's tons of dealers out there that'll happily take your money for a book like that. Just understand, it is anything but rare. And if the market for vintage comic books changes anytime soon, you're going to lose a considerable amount of money. Now, you're not going to lose as much as the person up here who simply seems to not realize that his 9.8 copy of Amazing Spider-Man 300 is anything but rare. Now, Timmy's, Kimmy's, and Poindexter's are going to come and attack me for saying that, but obviously, look at the numbers, guys. It's a freaking comic book from the Copper Age that was printed during a massive speculative bubble in comic books. Of course, there's a lot of copies out there. And another book that I was actually going to do in this same paradigm was going to be New Mutants 98. I did not want to do that because that book is almost as bad as Amazing Spider-Man 300. It's not quite as bad, but it's up there. It's bad. So let's compare this, though, to two books that I consider to be undervalued at present time. Oh my God, did Sean just say that certain vintage comic books could potentially be undervalued in the year 2022? Well, yeah, that's the good news. The bad news is most of you out there aren't going to be able to find these books, and if you do, less than 1% of you are going to be able to afford them. So let's go on and let's discuss the depth of the market as it relates to one of my favorite Marvel keys. And I really get excited when I talk about this character. Please know this is one of my favorite Marvel characters that I never revealed on this particular YouTube channel. Strange Tales 110. First appearance of Doctor Strange. Yes, in my opinion, this book is selling for a discount on the overall market. But we're never really going to know that because let's look at the numbers. CGC didn't grade any copies as of yet in 9.8 condition. And let's be realistic, most likely they never will. There are, however, 6 copies of this book in 9.6 condition. There's 15 in 9.4, and there's 18 in 9.2. Now, me being an investor, if I was going to go after this particular book, I would want it in either 9.2 or 9.4. There are 38 copies in 9.0 condition, but me, I would gravitate towards 9.2 or 9.4 condition. That's just me. This is a truly scarce Silver Age Marvel key. It's not as scarce as some, but it is up there. And Doctor Strange does have credibility in the overall Marvel universe. So let's talk about the last book on this list. And you guys know I saved the best for last. Incredible Hulk 1 is truly incredible. This particular book, there are 4 copies in 9.4 condition. Make note, 3 of these, to my knowledge, are restored. So just make note of that. There are 10 copies in 9.2. I don't know how many of those are restored. And there are 20 copies in 9.0 condition. Therefore, if you guys want to come into my comment section and tell me that you're an studious investor in vintage comic books, and you're telling me that you're investing in Amazing Spider-Man 300, or even to a lesser extent, Incredible Hulk 181, I'm going to ask you, how come you're not looking for a Strange Tales 110? How come you're not looking for an Incredible Hulk 1? These are the books that have a lower market depth. These are the books where if they come up for auction, I'm not going to even know how to assess their value at present time, simply because there's so few comparables when we start talking about grades over 9.0 on the open market to compare them to. This is what you should be investing in. Now, I know everybody's trying to go after Werewolf by Night 32. If you do a price history of that book, you're going to see within the last few years, it pretty much tripled and quadrupled in value. In my opinion, now's the time to sell your Werewolf by Night 32. And I'm going to say this, and this is against me, I should honestly be taking the time to sell my Incredible Hulk 181 at present time. Because honestly, in 9.4, selling for more than 20 grand, that particular book, I better hope that Wolverine's popularity continues to increase exponentially over the coming years. Otherwise, that book is going to drop in price, especially given the fact that there are 376 copies of that book in 9.6 alone and 144 in 9.8. Therefore, I got to ask, do you understand market depth? Depth of the market. How to analyze this. These particular items here, your Strange Tales 110, your Incredible Hulk 1, in high grade, they are going to be hard to appraise in value at present time, simply because so few copies over 9.0 come up for bid. These books, Amazing Spider-Man 300, New Mutants 98, Werewolf by Night 32, Tomb of Dracula 10, Incredible Hulk 180, Incredible Hulk 181. These books are common as day, guys. You are really not as smart as some of you think who bought these books and are now realizing, wow, I paid $1,000 for my CGC 9.8 Amazing Spider-Man 300, and now I could sell it for $5,000 to $10,000. My question to you is, why aren't you running to the market as fast as you can and selling it? I know the answer to that. Same reason why I'm not running to the market and selling my 9.4 copy of Incredible Hulk 181, because I have an emotional attachment to it. I get it. These are collectibles. They're emotional assets. But overall, those of you that are not financially established, you need to learn from this, because this is what the investors are going after. These two books, your Strange Tales 110, your Incredible Hulk 1. Most knowledgeable investors are not chasing after copies of Incredible Hulk 181, Werewolf by Night 32, New Mutants 98, or Amazing Spider-Man 300, unless they're getting them at below average market value so that they can flip them directly onto the market. This is just an introductory video to the concept of the depth of the market. Are you understanding these core concepts? This is vital, because we're not even through on this channel the important core concepts of antiques and collectible finance. And I want to make that very clear. We're like almost 400 videos in, and we haven't even gotten through all of these key concepts yet. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand, me being an investor in the antiques and collectibles trade, this means a lot to me. Seeing this in written form, or if I'm looking at a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 300, and the person selling it is a 9.8 condition copy, and he wants market price for it, and he's trying to tell me that this book is rare, I'm rolling my eyes calling that idiot a moron. Same thing, I hate to say it, is true for Incredible Hulk 181 and Werewolf by Night. Even if you put a Werewolf by Night 32 in 9.2 condition in front of me, yeah, it's an appealing book, but guess what? Right now, Werewolf by Night 32 is selling at all-time highs. Why would I want to pay market price for that book right now? That's how you have to analyze these markets. And yes, to sum this up, if you watch this video towards the end right now, I really believe Strange Tales 110 has a lot of value in the overall market, even in lower grades. Same thing's true for Incredible Hulk 1. You don't even have to own that book in 9.0 or higher. You can own that book in a lower grade, and it still has a lot of value. And the reason is depth of the market. Learn this. Profit from it. Do not be a Timmy. Do not be a Kimmy. Do not be a Poindexter. Do not be a crazy chick. Do not be a crazy guy. Understand these concepts, learn from them, and profit from them. Thank you for watching. Now I got to go to bed.